Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is on the science and research of BEMER. My name is Joshua Burka, Medical Director of the Academy for Bioenergetics. And the AFB, for those of you who don't know, an independent organization that researches and studies medical interventions that support bioenergetics. And the term bioenergetics is a term used in biochemistry that involves energy flow from the environment to and through living systems and from living systems to the environment. And from a medical perspective, bioenergetics is related to the manner in which cellular processes are maintained, sustained through the production and utilization of energy forms. And these energy forms are, in the body, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. So we're going to explore why and how BEMER supports energy production, energy regulation, and its relationship to health and disease through research and the science that has been done. Our mainstream healthcare paradigm is really like this: a function, structure, chemistry, and or biochemistry. And when we look at it from this perspective, there is a missing piece from this viewpoint. There's more subtle interactions that are occurring here, and they involve electromagnetic energy fields. This is a quote from Beverly Rubik and Robert Flower. They work for the National Institutes of Health. It says bioelectromagnetics essentially underlies all of biochemistry, and that chemical reactions of biological importance are mediated by the electromagnetic force. So therefore, it only makes sense then to have an intervention and or interventions that involve electromagnetic fields as well as biochemistry. Not just a pharmacological agent or a nutraceutical agent here, a vitamin or mineral, but you can influence biological functions through electromagnetisms, through information. And this is nowadays what we're finding out, that information can be delivered to biological systems, to the human body in different forms. I want to go over a few studies here that really involve the inception of using electromagnetic fields in scientific research in medicine. This was a study that was done in March 1989 by the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery called Prevention of Osteoporosis by Pulse Electromagnetic Fields. And before I even look at this, the first FDA approval of a pulse electromagnetic field device was back in 1979, and it was indicated for non-union fracture, failed fusions, congenital pseudoarthroses. In addition, there was a PMF device that was approved in 2004 as an adjunct to cervical fusion surgeries in patients at high risk for non-fusion. So this has been on the market or in the scientific realm for a while. It fully understood that bone that's not mending is able to mend using electromagnetic fields. And that's exactly what this study showed. They looked at bone loss, osteopenia, osteoporosis in astronauts under microgravitational situation, as well as postmenopausal population of aging. This is a 1992 study in the British Journal of Dermatology looking at using PMF devices to enhance healing of ulcers. This was a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, Department of Dermatology, New York University. They were looking at how it affects ulcers in the limbs. They used it for 3 hours per day, 8-week clinical trial with significant decrease in the wound area, wound depth, and pain. Again, now I look at this 12, 13 years later, or rather 20 years later as we look at this study. It's not so surprising because we see these results on a daily basis. Journal of Rheumatology. This was conducted a randomized double-blind clinical trial to determine the effectiveness of PMF on the treatment of OA, osteoarthritis. I just had a question on the medical hotline today regarding osteoarthritis. This was involved here with a study on knee and cervical pain. Arthro is joint, itis is inflammation. So when you're looking at inflammation of the joints, this study clearly showed out of the two groups, the treated and placebo group, that there was a statistical significance in relationship to pain on motion, tenderness for both knee and cervical spine patients, where the ones who were using the device had greater improvements. NASA themselves has been looking at electromagnetic fields for many years. In this particular review, they were looking at the physiological and molecular genetic effects of time-varying electromagnetic fields on human neuronal cells. Time-varying electromagnetic fields, very different than an electromagnetic field of a magnet or a magnetic bed or something like a biomat or something. Time-varying frequencies. That means electromagnetic fields are generated by varying the intensities and pulse of a waveform. In fact, NASA themselves, this team right here, are in a working relationship with Beamer, and in essence building coils that can be utilized for astronauts in microgravitational situations to avoid or to create countermeasures against bone loss, muscle atrophy. There's plenty of other things that happen when we get into microgravitational situations, including the change or dysfunction of vasomotor system and or hemodynamics, which means change in the way the blood moves through the body. So they're very, very interested in how Beamer can support our astronauts. Quite a bit also has happened since these early days of the 20th century. You can see here a gentleman reading his newspaper getting treated by a PMF coil on the right versus the new 2012 generation Beamer 3.0. Much sleeker, much more ingenuity, and also easier to utilize. Looking at this, what is the advantage of the Beamer pulse? You can see here an example of a difference between wave patterns, which have been utilized by traditional PMF devices such as sinusoidal, trapezoid, triangular, sawtooth that you see on the left, which all have a very narrow spectrum of application, versus a broad spectrum of application such as the Beamer signal, which overlays varied sinusoidal waves with different frequencies and different fluxes or amplitudes. And exactly how these impulses are created is proprietary, but the results are evident. The patent-protected Beamer impulse is one of a kind, for sure. And it consists of a series of half wave-shaped sine-like intensity variations, beginning very low initially, and then increasing slowly, then dropping down again to a value within the impulse, but higher than its initial value. And I know this sounds a little complicated, but this is known as timely variations, and you can see by this individual on the right with the white dots how Beamer affects virtually all cells in the body and has a very wide frequency spectrum. I just mentioned about the Beamer's patented technology. This patented waveform is the most researched and scientifically studied PMF device available today. All pulsed electromagnetic field devices that deliver waveforms in this way are not created equal. First and foremost, because of the type of waveform that you use, and the waveform matters. It's the spectrum of frequencies and the timely variations of the electromagnetic field that interacts with our cells to give rise to the desired physiological effects. And it's this technology that's the basis of the Beamer signal, which was created in 1998. Another aspect about Beamer that's unique is its field distribution, which enables this device to affect multiple cellular processes simultaneously. You can see here that the coils are orientated in such a way that influence the distal part of the body and the limbs, as well as the 4 coils that are located in the torso region. And in addition to the other profound effects that Beamer has on microcirculation, not the other effects, but the effect that Beamer has such a profound effect on microcirculation that in Europe it's considered a vascular therapy and it's a billable treatment covered by insurance. So you've heard this term microcirculation now. What is microcirculation? When you think of Beamer, think of microcirculation because Beamer is really best known for its positive effects on the vascular system, in particular the microcirculatory system. Microcirculation is a term used to describe the small vessels in the vasculature, and these vessels are embedded within organs and tissue, and they're responsible for the distribution of blood within our body, within our tissues. The most abundant microcirculatory vessels are in the capillaries. And in addition to these blood vessels, also microcirculation includes lymphatic capillaries and collecting ducts. The microcirculatory system makes up the largest part of the circulatory system. You can see here almost quarter, 3/4, 75% of the vessels in your body are microcirculatory vessels. You can see here it's 74. And that means that 3/4 of your circulatory system is compromised of small vessels, some smaller than the diameter even of a strand of hair, which delivers nutrients to the tissue, to the cells, and moves waste products out. So now that we understand a little bit about microcirculation, I want to talk to you about these 5 aspects that BEMER has been researched on: microcirculation, the effect on the immune system, BEMER's effect on protein synthesis, oxidative balance, and the autonomic nervous system. Starting first with microcirculation. Dr. Klopp, you can see how on the left, Dr. Rainier Klopp was commissioned by the International Society of Geriatrics to find non-invasive, non-drug alternatives to assist geriatrics with chronic conditions, which would ultimately reduce their use of medications and ultimately reduce the amount of capital expenditure for government. Dr. Klopp examined 12 different therapies and found none that even compared with the results obtained with BEMER, especially on the vascular level. And these findings were demonstrated after 30 days of treatment. When we look at the results, especially the most current results Dr. Klopp found, 28% improved vasomotion, which we'll discuss what vasomotion means. 30% more capillary vessels perfused. 31% improved venous drainage. That means the veins are able to drain better, clear out waste products, and 29% more oxygenation of tissue. What does that look like? From a still perspective, it would look like this. You can see on the left-hand side that the vessels are not perfused well with red blood cells or erythrocytes, which carry oxygen and remove carbon dioxide. These still images, while taken from a slight distance, allow us to view a larger area of the capillaries. The second image was done after a level 3 of 2 minutes, and you can see the change in perfusion of blood. And if you have not seen the intravital microscopy videos produced by Dr. Klopp, please do go on YouTube or ask your BEMER distributor that invited you to show you some of these scientific studies and or results that have been shown to increase microcirculation with the BEMER device. Our microcirculation is set up quite uniquely, and when we look at this simple depiction, if we look at blood coming in from the left through the arteries, arterioles, interacting and interfacing at the capillaries, and then clearing through the veins and venules, this is a representation of how blood moves through, delivered to the tissue, and is cleared out. Effective blood perfusion is imperative to health. If your blood is flowing properly, you're healthy. Yet getting the blood supply to the tissue can be the issues in a lot of chronic and acute diseases. And when the blood is not flowing, we're not flowing. We don't have energy. We're fatigued. We have poor circulation. So healthy circulation, and to be a little more precise, healthy microcirculation is the cornerstone of health. I mentioned vasomotion or vasomotion before. And vasomotion is quite interesting because vasomotion, as we look at it from the perspective of these heavy calibered vessels and the lighter calibered vessels in both the veins and arterioles, vasomotion is one of the main mechanisms of action of BEMER. And vasomotion naturally is the autorhythmical pulsations that occur within both the small and larger arterioles and venules. And these are controlled by both the nervous system and mediated biochemically through nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, we know, is a potent vasodilator. While a healthy individual may exhibit these vasomotor oscillations 2, 3, 4 times a minute in these smaller caliber venules and arterioles, someone who is ill may have 2 to 3 every 10 minutes. And you want these oscillations to be occurring because it creates a tone or a rhythm within the vasculature system. BEMER looked at the individuals who were healthy, found that 2 to 3 times per minute was standard, and looked at the responsiveness of the vessels with the unique waveform using 30 hertz and 10 hertz. 30 hertz was within the therapeutic window of 28 to 34 hertz, and also 8 to 14 hertz, BEMER chose 10 hertz as a frequency to affect the larger caliber vessels for its sleep program as well as its everyday user program. What you're looking at here is a blown-up view, just kind of a macroscopic view of an arterial, a smaller caliber arterial. And so this is how this works. The BEMER is working on the larger caliber vessels using 10 hertz, and the smaller caliber vessel using 30 hertz. And you can see that there is a dynamic interaction that's occurring between the local control and the higher order control. The nervous system keeps a tone maybe once a minute, while local control through nitric oxide is also involved with keeping tonicity of the smaller caliber. For those of you who want a little more information, here's the exact relationships of where the frequencies interact with the vasculature. The nerval response takes place at 10 hertz at the heavy calibered arterioles, and the nitric oxide effect at 30 hertz on the light caliber arterioles. And this is also true for the venules with 30 hertz and the heavier caliber at 10 hertz. They work simultaneously. Why is vasomotion important? Well, when you increase vasomotion, you increase pressure gradients of arterioles and venules, you increase venous drainage, you increase red blood cell distribution, ultimately increasing tissue nutrition, tissue drainage, which means waste products are being cleared from the system better, and a more functional effect on the immune system. And looking at the immune system, BEMER has a unique effect on the immune system, on white blood cells. Here's a nice depiction of a freeze frame image of the interior of the blood vessel. What you're looking on the outside is the lumen, and the center is how the blood cells move through the vessels. And these white blood cells adheres to the endothelium. So those little white balls that you see there are called white blood cells, and this is your mobile immune system that can be ready in an instant when it needs to, when you get cut, when a virus comes in, a bacteria, fungus, anything that needs to be cleaned up and or identified as non-self. These two images left, and it's very difficult to see, but I'm going to just point here. On this lower area, you can see, and this is only a still picture, I again encourage you to look at the live feeds of this. Only 1 or 2 white blood cells here, and you can see on the right, after 2 minutes using the BEMER, multiple white blood cells on the endothelial wall. Does this mean that the BEMER helps produce more white blood cells? Not necessarily. What the BEMER does do, however, is it allows for mobilization of these cells. Your mobile immune system, the BEMER helps support energetically or bioenergetically the capacity for your immune system to be mobilized and activated. We've talked a bit about microcirculation, about the immune system, and a little bit on protein synthesis. We're protein building machines. We use structural proteins, information proteins, hormones, transport proteins, enzymes. We make and break proteins all day and all night. One of the studies that looked at a particular protein was looking at bone. And initially I talked about some studies which were not directly related to BEMER itself, just generalized electromagnetic field therapies. But this particular study by Kafka in 2005 looked at the BEMER itself, pulsed electromagnetic field in orthopedics, on bone regeneration. And what was found was that osteoblastic activity, which is bone building, was increased by 4 to 5 times proliferation. Now we have osteoblastic, which builds up, and osteoclastic, which breaks down. And a lot of these pharmaceutical interventions, Actonel, Fosamax, what they do is they inhibit osteoclastic activity, which is the breakdown of bone. And there's some problems with this, and not to get into this, it's beyond the scope of this webinar. However, do know that the BEMER can help with regenerating bone, cartilage, or any type of tissue. So if someone has decreased bone density, for example, osteopenia, osteoporosis, BEMER can help support with proliferation and to regenerate that tissue. Of course, there is hormones involved, there's nutrients involved, metabolic aspects that are all involved with why and how we are anabolically building up or catabolically breaking down. So all these are very important. Speaking of bone, here is a image of a non-union fracture that was taken. This individual broke the femur. You can see post-operation. It's set in there with the stabilizer. But this image was also taken because the non-union fracture was not mending. You can see here after 4 weeks of really nothing, it's brought back together, but it is not solid. And so at these 4 weeks, the individual started using the BEMER, and after 4 more weeks, you can see clearly that it calcified the lesion. Almost 100%, you can still see that the plate in between on the right-hand side is not completely closed, but that's a very, very good healing for a non-union fracture. And that was using the BEMER for only 4 weeks in this case. Unfortunately, they did not know about the BEMER before, or else it would have been utilized. A question that I get is, how does this work? We know that it works, but really, what's the mechanism? How does this occur? Bone has electrical qualities. Make no mistake about it. In its healthy physiological condition, bone maintains a dynamic balance between both positive and negative charges. And when a bone is fractured, it changes the polarity at the fracture site to an electronegative environment rather than an electropositive. And this negative polarity indicates that the body's natural repair processes need to begin. And in certain cases, electronegative environment may not be sufficient to maintain the natural healing process of a non-union fracture, as we saw in the previous image. But PMF, when it's added, enhances the electrical polarity by inducing an electrical field at the fracture site. And this supports the natural healing process that stimulates fracture repair. So using the BEMER for bone growth stimulation generates a time-varying magnetic field within the body. And the electrical potential created by the PMF stimulates fracture healing. So not looking at a fracture, but this is a case of osteonecrosis. And this individual was treated with the BEMER. Osteonecrosis basically means degeneration of necrosis of the bone. And so this is a very serious condition. It can lead to quite some problems. After 9 weeks only of using BEMER, you can see here that the radiopacities and the knee joint, is almost 100% healed. You can see some areas still, and I'll point with the pointer, in the central aspect on the right, but all in all, very, very good. This individual was also out of pain. And I want to take this opportunity to bring to mind how BEMER can be used to enhance bioavailability of nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, whatever is being taken by mouth into the body to be driven to a particular source or a point or a focal region. And this is done with the full body mat as well as the intensive applicators. If someone does have osteodegeneration, osteoporosis, osteodegeneration of a joint of the arm or the shoulder or the knee, you might want to give glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, MSM, other nutrients that you know will help regenerate that tissue. And maybe do that just before using the mat on the BEMER and following up with the applicator on the affected region to really push or drive those nutraceuticals or those raw materials to the tissue that needs it. Otherwise, how do you know it's getting there? Especially joints. Joints are notoriously known to not be very well perfused with vasculature, vessels, and or nerves. So very difficult to get nutrients there and waste products out unless there's a lot of mobility. Focusing next on oxidative balance. What is oxidative balance? First of all, our cells are constantly stressed through oxidative stress, and oxidative stress in any cell creates dysfunction. Not just within our cells themselves, but within the mitochondria of our cells. Mitochondrial DNA, which produces ATP, not the DNA, but the mitochondria itself, are up to 1,000 times more susceptible to oxidative damage. And so how do we protect ourselves? Well, we're under oxidative stress every day. So why do some people age better than others, or why are some people protected better than others? And this comes down to not just what we take in as antioxidants, but what we make as antioxidants. We have natural mechanisms like glutathione produced by the liver, which is a potent antioxidant, and the BEMER effectively triggers the release of glutathione. And this protects every cell in your body. Take a look at this study here. This study was done by Kafka in 2003 looking at the prevention of oxidant stress on red blood cells. It showed a 10% increase in reduced glutathione with a decrease in lipid peroxidation levels. BEMER supports anti-aging. BEMER is a supportive of your body's natural production of its own powerful antioxidant. And we can go further into antioxidants with melatonin, and BEMER also supports this through the sleep program, which we'll be speaking about very shortly. But beyond microcirculation, the immune system, protein synthesis, oxidative balance, BEMER also has a unique effect on the autonomic nervous system. The ANS, or autonomic nervous system, is the system that controls functioning largely below our consciousness. Visceral functions, heart rate, digestion, respiratory rate, salivation, perspiration, pupil diameter, on and on, urination, sexual arousal. And it's classically divided into two systems, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And I'm going to add this in too. Interestingly enough, it's been also discovered that a third subsystem of neurons has been described and found to be an integral part of this autonomic system, particularly in the gut, the gastrointestinal system, and the lungs. And what makes them so unique is that they use nitric oxide as a neurotransmitter. Full circle back to nitric oxide and the BEMER. So a study was done looking at dental anxiety. And many people do get anxious when they go in the dental office. This was a single test. 90 subjects were tested, evaluating them on blood pressure, pulse rate, subjective experience, and a stress questionnaire. And over half the participants in a single application had marked improvement. This is a good slide because this is also looking at the nervous system. This was a publication that back in December of 2009 in the Journal of Complementary and Alternative Medicine, publication was set that looked at bioelectromagnetic energy regulation, BEMER, on MS-related fatigue around multiple sclerosis. Parameters are simple. Treatments were done for 8 minutes, twice a day for 12 weeks, and the results conclusively revealed that BEMER users in the study had a significant decrease in fatigue related with MS. This particular study was such a success, they continued the study to look at the long-term effects of BEMER and allowed those people, as an open-labeled crossover study, to come in who were not using the BEMER before. They were in the sham or the placebo group. And this study continued to show, even after 12 weeks, that those who were using the BEMER and those new users also had significant decrease in fatigue. How does the BEMER affect fatigue? How does the BEMER affect energy? First of all, energy is produced through the building and breaking of high energetic molecules, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and we consume oxygen to do this through oxidative phosphorylation. BEMER brings more oxygen to the tissue, therefore, by bringing more oxygen, cellular respiration can take place more efficiently. Oxygen comes into the cell, nutrients come into the cell utilizes these nutrients, oxygen, and kicks out carbon dioxide, water, and hydrogens. Hydrogens are acid, waste products. And this is all maintained on a daily basis. Cell membrane potential, as you look at the top 70 to 90 millivolts, we are literally batteries. We have to hold energy in our system as a capacity or a function of survival. And the better you can do that, the better and more healthy you are. Back to energy. A lot of people think if you're not sleeping well, you don't have a lot of energy, and this is a fact. Briefly want to bring up circadian rhythms here. Microcirculation, or the distribution and diffusion of blood, is different during different parts of the day. Your active phase, which takes place in the daytime, versus your sleep and regeneration phase. Mainly, during the active stage, your blood is in the musculoskeletal system, your gastrointestinal, your brain, and your nervous system. You want that. You're active during these time frames. During your sleep or regeneration phases, you want the blood supply in your livers, your kidneys, spleen, skin. You want to be clearing out the waste products that you created during the day and flush them out of your body. You're only as healthy with what you can remove, what you can eliminate, what you can detoxify. You can be the healthiest person, you can eat all organic, you can live well, but if you're not detoxifying well, if you're not having daily bowel movements, if you're not sweating, you will not be healthy. It's not just about what you take in, it's also about what you excrete. The BEMER Sleep Program is mentioned here because it supports the body's detoxification system by enabling you to go into a deeper, more peaceful sleep. The BEMER Sleep Program is a revolutionary program that is just introduced with this BEMER 3.0 system, which is the new BEMER system. It's used on level 2, 7 microtesla. 10 hertz is the primary frequency that's used. It's actually the only frequency used, and the BEMER is on for 2 hours when you fall asleep and 2 hours before waking. And that's irrespective if you sleep for 6 hours, 7 hours, 8, 9 hours. The pattern is the same. But what they found out is that the BEMER helps with excretion of metabolic waste products during this time frame. By using the 10 hertz, which is synonymous with alpha rhythms or alpha waves, it helps bring the body into a natural sleeping cycle and also supports detoxification. Here is a study that was looked at looking at pH values in the urine with control versus BEMER. pH meaning acidity levels. You want to have a low pH when you wake up because that tells me that all the acid in your body is being removed through the bladder and or stool. And that's why when you look at the urine, you want a fairly acidic pH in the morning. And you can see versus the control versus BEMER group, that's exactly what occurs. Those of you who use the BEMER may notice, especially for the sleep program, may notice that the urine may be a little more concentrated in the morning, or that there might be a scent or a smell or odor to the urine that is uncharacteristic of what you usually had. And this is, again, helping the body support its elimination of toxic waste, both exogenous from the outside world and endogenous, what your body produces by itself. So what is BEMER technology capable of beyond some of the research that we looked at? Of course, microcirculation. Helps support if someone is susceptible to infection, reducing susceptibility by enhancing immune function, strengthening the body's physical defenses, better supplying and detoxification of your organs and tissues, reducing the effects of stress, supporting impaired healing processes, and a better performance and capacity. With a better performance and capacity, you have shorter regeneration periods and lower risk for sports training injuries. And this does not mean the top athlete alone. This could be your everyday person who's walking around, sitting at a desk, managing a family, managing a business, whatever it might be. When you use the BEMER, it supports you in the regeneration of what you expended, the energy expenditure, both physical and emotionally. And it's good to bring this up now, too, because we've had a major flu epidemic going on here. And I've been asking my people calling in on the hotline, how have they been doing? And so many of my patients have been sick and other patients of colleagues. And a lot of BEMER users have not been affected by the flu this year. Very, very surprising. And do note, this is just the beginning of this first wave. There will be other waves of flu happening before the end of this season. So BEMER increases ATP production or energy by 22%, 29% perfusion rates. That means increased blood flow, and it stimulates two types of vasomotion using 10 and 30 hertz with an effect that lasts up to 18 hours, 12 to 18 hours. So you no longer have to use the BEMER 4 or 5 times a day. Sometimes just once or twice a day, or using the sleep program, is all it takes. I'd like to briefly end here with some clinical cases with the BEMER. Looking here at this foot, diabetes. This is a 56-year-old male diabetic with such bad circulatory insufficiency he was scheduled for amputation surgery. You can see on the left side that third toe in was necrotic. It's actually black. And I also want to bring note to the stasis dermatitis on the right side here of the image. These are the same foot, same time frame. This was before the BEMER was utilized and before the amputation of that third toe. But they started using BEMER directly after the amputation. And the second image here you can see was taken 6 weeks later using BEMER twice a day. So considerable change. Wish we could have saved the toe in this case, but diabetes is something that takes a long time to develop, type 2 diabetes, and also can take a while to treat. I had someone call me on the hotline today, and she was a little discouraged and or disappointed because of all the testimonials she hears on BEMER, and she said, I've been using it now for 4 to 6 weeks or so, and I haven't had great results with my the arthritis that I've been having. Well, if something has been developing for over 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you have to give it more than 4 to 6 weeks, regardless of the intervention. And so in this particular case, I said you should really not start looking for changes all the way up from 4 to 6, even 7 months. So do know that if you're a new user and or an existing user. Another case of leg ulceration with stasis dermatitis. This is on the shin. You can see here, this was after 8 weeks total, 2 months, and you might say, well, maybe it would have healed on its own. That doesn't seem like a good result. Let me tell you what, this is a great result. And the reason is this is also a diabetic patient, and the blood perfusion is a problem with diabetes and healing. You can have venous ulcers or calcitrant ulcers that don't heal for years. And so this is a great result, and you can again see the stasis dermatitis has disappeared, new skin is showing up on the last photo. Here's some images on diabetic retinopathy. These images were taken in Europe. Diabetic retinopathy is first of all, is damage to the retina, and it's caused by complications of diabetes in many ways, and it can eventually lead to blindness. The diabetic retinopathy is estimated to be probably one of the most frequent causes of new cases of blindness among adults in the ages from 25 to 75. And in its ocular manifestation, basically diabetes is a systemic disease, but in the ocular manifestation, it can affect up to 80% of its patients. So if someone has diabetes, you better believe that something is going on, even if it's not diagnosable. Clinically, it's important, especially with the eyes, ocular involvement, and or kidneys. So if someone's had diabetes 10 plus years, you know that there's something going on with the eyes, whether it's a small amount or not. And despite these intimidating statistics, the research indicates at least 90% of these new cases could be reduced if there was a properly delivered vigilant treatment and if there was monitoring. So this was done on individuals with diabetes, diabetic retinopathy. You can see here, take a look. I'm going to point. These regions here, this is the central region, the fovea, this is fine, but when you look at, this is called drusen, this is deterioration. This is a disruption in the tissue of the eye. After 2 months of BEMER, you can see it's almost but disappeared and almost completely disappeared after 9 months. And this is using it on the body mat as well as over the eyes. I believe the studies were done on level 3 on the mat and 3 with the intensive applicator on the temples bilaterally, both sides of the eye. Beamer can be used for health and performance, rehabilitation, and as we discussed, therapy. Therapeutically, Beamer is one of the most widest field of applications. Very few contraindications. I can use it with other modalities, microcurrent, laser, manual therapies, acupuncture, and so on. A lot of athletes will use this as well for prevention, recovery, all the way from Olympic athletes all the way to high school athletes. I've seen it all throughout the spectrum. For rehabilitation, for improving mobility, supporting wound and injury recovery, geriatrics, Beamer has been used successfully for all 3 of these parts, the health and performance, therapeutically, and rehab. Finish off with some studies here. This is a study that looks at extremely weak fields using the Beamer on DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness, is from acid. Lactic acid is building up in your muscles and not being cleared appropriately, and therefore you'll get the soreness, so you don't train or you do not work that muscle until it's recovered. Beamer helps support much faster recovery with delayed onset muscle soreness. This is also a study by Spodarek looking at the influence of extremely weak fields on ventilatory threshold, the perceived level of exertion. That means the individuals who were using the Beamer perceptually were able to have a better performance, to breathe better, not to be as tired as much. Some of the pinnacle studies of this work was done on the Swiss Olympic team. And this study looked at the regeneration time of professional athletes through the alteration of what's called CK elimination curve, which is creatine kinase. Creatine kinase is an enzyme that is utilized sometimes to monitor if a heart attack occurs, but in short, if there's been muscle damage. So there were some other biochemical markers that were looked at, creatine kinase, troponin, aldolase, GOT, etc. But mainly the subjective experience, they looked at muscular pain from a visual analog scale, and they looked at these particular enzymes to see if there was damage in the tissue. How they did it was even more unique. They took these downhillers, these professional racers, and they put them under rigorous, grueling testing. What you're looking at, this individual on the left side is standing, and unfortunately it's a still photo, but he's standing on what is supposed to be something similar to downhill racing skis, and these are jolting and moving as if he was going 100 miles an hour. And he has to tuck below that bar above him to maintain the position, to really focus in on the quadriceps. You can see here that was done for 6 minutes, 2 minutes of stress with 2 minutes of rest, and Beamer was either used with the placebo, active, or the active mat. That means the Beamer was either being utilized or not being utilized, and the results were very clear. Those who used the Beamer had quicker recovery in both perceptual or subjective as well as objective in their studies of their enzymes. Beamer has an outstanding spectrum of effects in changing the characteristics of microcirculation. If you don't know or don't remember much about this webinar, know about the microcirculatory effects, because this is the key aspect of what Beamer is all about. It's effective for very long periods of time, as I said, 12 to 18 hours, virtually no side effects, and very easy to use. I do have some time right now. I want to open up the line for some questions, and hopefully we can answer some questions here, Anne, before the end of the hour.
Sure, let me open up the question side.
And these questions should be typed in, and Anne will basically speak them to me, and I will do my best to answer these questions as I can.
My son has post-stroke chronic pain syndrome. Can this technology help?
Post-stroke chronic pain syndrome, I think I heard you say. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So the name of the game with post-stroke is getting the individual ASAP, as soon as you can, post-stroke. And the reason is because once someone has had a stroke, whether it be hemorrhagic and or a blockage where it's hypoxia, low oxygen to the tissue, the neurons die very quickly and they're not apt to recover unless you get someone within days to weeks. I'm not saying you can't have improvements after months or years, but the studies have been very clear that the quicker you start to work on the individual, the better. How would you use it for this individual's son that she's asking? I would use it in much the same way as I would acutely right afterwards. I would use the mat itself, the bead body, on the basic plan. If they've been using it for a while, you might want to consider even using a P1 so it gives it a nice break in between each of the levels. And you can certainly use either the B spot or B pad as the local applicator directly underneath the head itself. So if it's someone's lying on a pillow, and you say you're using the Pro system, you could even run this simultaneously while you're using the B body, the mat. And you would either use the B pad or the B spot, and I would use this on probably a mid-level, maybe a level 5, 6, or 7, and or if you're going to use one of the programs, maybe a P2-ish. Again, you're not right or wrong using exact levels. The name of the game here is using the appropriate dosage that works. Not necessarily a level 10 for this or a level 1 for that, but understanding if this individual is 150 pounds and they have a small cranium, I wouldn't necessarily use a level 10. Level 10 would go right through, and a level 5 may be plenty of power or flux to get into the brain and start to increase the circulation to that particular region. So if that individual has more questions, she can contact me directly at the AFB at the number below during hotline hours.
Thank you. Are there any studies or research with Beamer on reflex sympathetic dystrophy?
I have not seen any, Anne. And the RSD, I've actually treated quite a few patients with RSD. Very difficult to treat in general. But with Beamer, it's quite nice. I've used dietary, I've used nutraceutical support, pharmaceutical support. But using Beamer with RSD is nice because you're working not just on the focal region, and many times that's the hands or feet, but you're also working systemically on the body and how the nervous system is modulating the expression of that pain pattern. So I have not seen any studies looking at RSD. I think it would be wonderful if we can find someone that is working with these types of disease patterns on a everyday level, so we can do the research on it. But I believe a Beamer would be excellent to be used with RSD, and I wouldn't change anything or necessarily have a direct protocol that is specific for RSD other than using the mat on the full body on low levels on the basic plan and the applicators on the hands and or feet or both.
Thank you. Have you seen any improvement in patients with chronic kidney function?
Yes, I have. Not just people with poor perfusion rates of kidney, but also single functioning kidneys. We can look at glomerular filtration rate, creatine clearance, and if you want to, and someone that you do know, or if you are that individual asking this question who has poor perfusion or poor kidney function, you might want to do before and afters, really look at how you started out and also using the Beamer if your perfusion rates or your kidney function has increased or have been helped. And the way that I work with people with kidney function or diminished kidney function, a lot of times this can be from diabetes as we spoke of, is I will really look at the full body. I will look at how they're taking their foods in. Are they eating a lot of sugar? But as far as the Beamer, using the full body mat based on the basic program, and you can also use, if you have the applicator, the small applicator, the B spot, you can use that in between the kidneys. But my preference is to use the B pad orientated horizontal over the kidneys themselves and using a fairly low level, maybe a P1, level 2, level 3, maybe a level 4. And you can do that with the plus signal to help with the vasomotor function. This also supports adrenal function, which can be very beneficial for the entire system. So yes, I have on my own personal clinical patients, and I've heard great results from users across the United States calling the hotline for kidney function.
Thank you. With improved circulation with diabetic circulation after 30 days of treatment, what is the frequency of use that the subject were using the BEMER?
This is another great question, and I mean, when we look at the BEMER and we look at the basic plan, it's set up for everyday daily use. When the body gets back into a more functional aspect, you shouldn't have to use the BEMER every day. Same thing is true for working out. You wouldn't necessarily have to work out these same muscles every day, but you have muscle memory, and your body has neurological memory as well. When you put the information of the BEMER, and I say information very clearly here because the waveform and the manner in which it's delivered is information which the body responds to. And it does so at the neurological level as well as the neurohormonal level with nitric oxide effect. So a lot of people after 30 days, I would generally tell them to keep using the BEMER on a daily, at least 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week if possible. But after a while, and you will know how you feel, you can start cutting back the frequency of usage, maybe 2, 3 times a week or twice a week. Or if you're using the sleep program, alternate sleep program with day usage. At this point for me, I use the sleep program maybe 3 times a week and will do the BEMER a couple times a week to maintain my desired level of function or health. So it really depends on each individual, and that's the most important thing. How you use the BEMER isn't necessarily how the next person should do it, and keep that in mind when making any recommendations to your colleagues and or other distributors.
Can regular use of BEMER help us to achieve healthy blood pressure levels?
Good question. So looking at blood pressure or hypotension or hypertension, hypertension is probably far more common where people have high blood pressure. And why do people have high blood pressure? That doesn't mean that they need an ACE inhibitor or they have a deficiency with a beta blocker. It means that their nervous system is not dealing well with the manner in which they're living through this world. Either the nervous system is overreacting and is constricting the vessels, or the tissue itself or the vascular itself is damaged and it cannot maintain proper pressure. In either case, stress is the underlying cause. And how does BEMER manage stress? Well, BEMER doesn't manage stress, people manage stress. But BEMER helps to support the balance between the autonomic, the parasympathetic, and sympathetic nervous system. And this is one of the ways that it works on the 10 and 30 hertz. The 2 frequencies. So for hypertension, this is, it really shouldn't even be a diagnosis. It's more the tip of an iceberg in the sense of a symptom. Hypertension in many ways can be supported by using BEMER by using lower levels, levels 1, 2, 3, with or without the plus signal, and not doing it too often in the evenings. If you're going to do the BEMER in the evening, do a level 1 maybe after work or towards the latter part of the day. But this would be the best aspect for utilizing it if hypertension is your primary goal here, to decrease the hypertension. Other things are important as well. If you're going to be on the BEMER 8-12 minutes, set up a time where that is done on a daily basis. You take them, someone with hypertension has to take a medication every day. Well, therefore, they should do their best to change the manner in which this whole thing started in the first place, and that is changing breathing patterns, changing the way the diaphragm moves, slow, deep, even breaths. So while they're on the BEMER for 8, 10, 12 minutes, to focus on the breath and reset the nervous system. This will have the largest effect on hypertension than any pharmacological intervention over the long term. Acute cases, I'm not saying to not use pharmacological interventions. They certainly should if it's detrimental to the entire person's health. But for an individual who has low-grade hypertension and is trying to change that, BEMER is a great way to initiate that, or an adjunctive care model to support that.
Can this also help in breast microcalcifications?
This is a really good point to bring up here, because we'll talk about breast calcifications first, but I want to just talk in general about how things calcify in the body. Soft tissue is designed not to be hard. I mean, bone is hard. That's designed to be the structural impetus of maintaining and sustaining structure, which facilitates function. Calcifications in the breast should not be there. And how things calcify generally is the same way that things would come out of solution if they're not moving. If you have a stream that slowly slows down at the end and creates a low-grade pond or a quagmire, you're going to have solutes precipitate from that fluid, the water. The same thing happens in your body. If blood is not moving, if lymphatics are not moving, calcifications can occur. And this is a lot of times, especially with the breast, has to do with hormones, but also has to do with lymphatic stagnation. The individual their lymphatics are not either draining well or their detoxification system is not working that well, which ends up with building up hormone metabolites, which can lead to far worse things than calcifications. But as far as using the BEMER for calcifications, it would certainly help, but instead of thinking about, oh, I'm going to have a calcification, I'm going to put a BEMER right over there, think of it as a systemic matter. With breast calcifications, I use the BEMER mat on full body, and we'll also use the B pad or the B spot directly under the axillary region or the armpit, especially the left side where the subclavian duct drops in to drain the lymphatics and mix with the venous system, our blood. Putting the B spot or B pad under the armpits and helping support that drainage of lymphatics. If there's a bad leg or something that is a causal factor, then I will also use the B pad on those regions that are causing venal or venous impairment of return to blood to the heart or to the lungs. So again, yes, it can be quite good in these cases to use the BEMER with calcifications, especially soft tissue calcifications. Do we have time for one more question, Anne?
I have been using the sleep mode each night. What mode should be used during the day to improve bone density with early osteoporosis?
So I'm reluctant to directly answer this question when we talk about treating osteoporosis or this or that, but I will tell you that if you're going to have someone with osteopenia, with osteoporosis, they're using the BEMER, just using the BEMER on the basic plan is going to be very good, but using the B pad over these regions, for instance, if you have a DEXA scan done and you have some osteoporosis, osteopenic regions in the spine or the hip or the pelvis, then you would use the B pad directly over those areas on high levels, P4, level 10. Importantly enough, it's important to give raw materials. And if you are not versed in and I'm not talking about pharmaceutical like Fosamax as I talked about or Actonel. I'm talking about giving your body, your bones, the raw materials to build and maintain that structure. A lot of times I will use basic oils, fish oil. I will also use calcium apatite, which is microcrystalline hydroxyapatite with vitamin D. Some people use strontium as well. I use tissue regeneration and growth factors. And another product, which I'm not gonna talk about any product names out here today, but another product which helps to increase bone density naturally, which uses natural berberine compounds. So important to use the full body mat for the bones as well as the applicators themselves. If you don't have the B body, you can use the B spot on these particular regions. But the best applicator for usage with osteoporosis, osteopenia would be the B body, as well as the B pad itself over those regional spots.
How come the BEMER can be helping so many different conditions?
That's a question I had also when I first got involved years ago. How can the BEMER be involved with helping so many different conditions? I would ask the same question. How can water be so vital to life? Electromagnetic energy, and specifically the field that's generated by the BEMER, influences virtually every cell of your body, from the DNA all the way up to protein synthesis and dipole interactions and dipole moments of water molecules. So when the question comes up, how can BEMER influence so many diseases? I don't look at diseases. I look at people. I look at function and process. Structural integrity and functional aspects that support optimal levels of function. BEMER is an impetus of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, so it is putting energy into the body, and at a bare minimum, beyond the effects of microcirculation of the vasculature and microcirculation, is its effect on ATP, energy production, transference of energy through information medicine. And so if you take virtually any dis-ease, dysfunction, you can bring it back to bioenergetics, and you can bring it back to very simple aspects of how the BEMER can be used to support that. I'm not saying that the BEMER is here to diagnose and or treat any disease at this point. It is not a Class 2 medical device at this time, but it can be used, and I use it clinically on a daily basis to treat a wide variety of various diagnosable diseases and or conditions. There's not a cookbook out there, there's not a protocol manual, but if you understand how BEMER works, then you will understand how to use BEMER for yourself as well as other people with multiple expressions of disease or dysfunction. We're a little bit after time. I wanted to thank you for having me. Unless there's one more question you might have, Anne, I would like to close this off for the day.
One more question is, I am electrical sensitive and I'm worried to use the BEMER. Why is the BEMER safe compared to other EMF? Good.
And again, this stems back to information. There are electromagnetic fields. We're bathed in literally electromagnetism, both natural and aberrant fields that are created by technology. Cell phones, radio waves, satellites, your digital cable, everything, smart meters now, everything is communicated through waveforms. Packets of information delivered on waves that you can't see, taste, smell, or experience. And so there are a lot of people that are having electromagnetic sensitivities or electrical sensitivities these days. BEMER not only, and again, one of the reasons BEMER does not adversely affect is because the flux densities or the powers are very, very low. You can dial them down literally 2.3 microtesla. Versus, and this information, first of all, before I go on, that the BEMER is delivering is a language that the body speaks. Not something that is transferring information to a text message or a text or a voice command or visual data that's coming through on your television, which when it interacts with your cells, your body is like, what is this? And so therefore it can create adverse reactions because it's represented as a foreign invader, a foreign entity that the body has to respond to. And so I have had many, many patients who have had multiple chemical sensitivities, multiple sensitivities regarding electromagnetism, electrical fields, and virtually every single one of them has been able to use the BEMER. Granted, I do start on a low level with them. Sometimes I'll keep them on level 1 without the plus signal for weeks. So it's it really depends, again, on each person. And just because you can use level 10 doesn't mean that person to the left or the right of you or someone you're working with can use it on the same level as you. And that's why it's important to ask the appropriate questions, find out the metabolic function of the individual, and if in doubt, contact the AFB and ask the appropriate questions regarding the how and when can I use the BEMER system. The BEMER can be used on geriatrics, pediatrics, can be used with acute and chronic conditions, can be used on simple fractures or compound fractures, can be used on so many different conditions, yet it's not designed to treat any one of them. It works at the fundamental level of increasing energy production, and as you enhance bioenergetics, you enhance performance of the body and support regulation of that energy. I'm going to finish now. My name is Dr. Joshua Burka. I am the Medical Director of the Academy for Bioenergetics, and with that, I'm going to close today's webinar. If you have further questions, feel free to contact me at the AFB, www.afb-us.com, and or contact the AFB during hotline hours.